You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Global Trade This Week. I am Doug Draper, one of your hosts. I'm joining you on this episode from lovely Fresno, California. And literally on the other side of the country is my partner in crime and co-host, Pete Mento, who has his chair flipped around. So both of us have different backgrounds on this show, just keeping it real. How you doing, Pete?
I'm good, buddy. It's going to freak folks out. They're going to wonder what's going on with the show.
Yeah.
But we're bi-coastal this week, not bipolar. So I'm glad we gave him a different view. I told you, I like you with the nice internet and a professional office. It's a good look.
Yes.
Buddy.
My office in Denver is like a 10 by 10 cube, and here it's got a little echo. So if there's an echo to our listeners, I apologize about that. But yeah. So Pete, when I come into California, especially the Central Valley, huge ag industry, and it's not making news as it was in the atmospheric rivers, but there's still a big concern about the amount of water that's coming down from the Sierras and the farmland and everything else. And I flew over yesterday. I came in at like 8 o'clock last night. There is so much snow still in the mountains. It looks like it's middle of winter. It's unbelievable. So I think that there's just going to be a water situation out here for the entire summer. It's just, I was blown away at how much snow was still up in the mountains.
Yeah. It's pretty cold here. You know, when we went to the White Mountains last week, I didn't see any up in the peaks. I know there is some still. I know they're actually still skiing up in Vermont and in northern New Hampshire and the higher elevations and like at Tuckerman's and stuff. They're still skiing, but I didn't see any. However, it has, as I was saying to you and Keenan before the show, it's been in the 40s, the lower 50s the last couple of days, been in the 40s, upper 30s overnight up here in New Hampshire the last couple of days, but it's been ridiculous weather. 90s for a couple of days, 30s. It's miserable. And then on top of that, I suffer from seasonal allergies like all American nerds. I think it's actually part of the deal. Yeah. So these past couple of days with that low pressure, man, I have been, just blowing snot and sneezing, and it's been bad, Doug. Before the show, I had to blow some Flonase up my nose and take some pills like an hour ago. So hopefully I make it through without sneezing so hard I blow my laptop across the room. We'll see how I do.
Yeah. Well, it's a good start. A bunch of old guys left. We checked the box on talking about weather and personal ailments.
Yep.
So we're definitely showing our age on this one. So
well, you must have seen what I put on LinkedIn last week.
I know you posted a couple different things. Which one?
I said about the show, we should change the name to Two Old Guys Complaining About Things rather than Global Trade This Week, because we just basically were just like too cranky, curmudgeonly. Rawr! I remember when I was young. Yeah, it was bad. We sounded like the two guys in the balcony on the Muppet Show last week.
Oh, love it. Yeah, No, what were their names?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Anyway, that'll be somebody listening will know. So
yeah, it won't be Keenan though, because I don't think the Muppet Show. Yeah, God, there's no way.
Yeah, we stumped him with some old school Chicago Transit Authority and Robert Lamb back in the day. We stumped him on that.
I was shocked he knew who the Doobie Brothers were. That blew me away, and that he had actually been to a Doobie Brothers show. That freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah, but, entrepreneurial spirit. He's selling glow sticks to a drunk college kid, so I'll give him credit for that.
God bless you, Keenan.
So, anyway, let's do this. We're going to start with we're going to tag team a topic because it is very relevant and very important to our industry. So we're going to do 3 topics this week, and we'll start with the one that we'll share. So kick it off, Pete.
Yeah, we'd be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time together talking about the work stoppage on the West Coast last week. Mm-hmm. And you can call it whatever you'd like. I don't think that we could accurately call it a strike or a work stoppage, because I don't think that they called it a strike or a work stoppage. But boy, did it feel like one on the West Coast last week. Everything, it felt ominous. It felt like something almost out of a horror film. Everything was going perfectly fine. And then suddenly people weren't showing up for work. They weren't showing up for their shifts. They were slowing down. People were, half of them were showing up for the shifts. But long story short, the ports were unable to work at full staff. And it was big news, big news. So on Friday and over the weekend, if anybody was reading the trades, if you were on LinkedIn, if you were on Twitter, it was everywhere. And what's, I guess, a little ironic is we've been shoving so much freight onto the East Coast because we've all been sort of tenuously waiting for something like this to happen. And it finally has. But volumes have been so low on the East Coast and the West Coast. I don't know. I mean, did it really feel like it happened? Was it, if you were going to pick a time, it is before peak season, if there is such a thing this year, but it did get a lot of attention. What's unfortunate is there hasn't been as slow a period. There hasn't been as precipitous a downturn in freight rates and in volumes that we've seen in a long time. And I think that the ship owners and the carriers and the ports have got the port workers in a bit of a pickle and a bit of a bind, because I don't know how much leverage the unions really have right now. They had a whole lot more a year ago, and they still got plenty of leverage. Don't get me wrong, but they don't have as much as they used to. And it's unfortunate because we've gone a year now without a contract, and they probably picked the wrong time to really push the leverage, Doug.
Yeah. The two things that caught my attention on this is the headline for this one, Pete, was LA, Long Beach, Oakland, and Seattle. So it was a West Coast, not just LA, which jives to your point is that, all right, where is the leverage? The volumes are down. How much interruption can they cause? Well, let's get our brothers in arms together and let's talk about all of the ports on the West Coast. And then that got me thinking about, okay, well, there's got to be an alternative motive here as well. And I'm just going to read it verbatim that I found. This is specific to the memorandum of agreement between the Port of Seattle and the longshoremen up there. Yada, yada, yada. It's like 45 pages long, but it says the memorandum of agreement shall remain in effect through the duration of the collective bargaining agreement, which is December 31st, 2023. So I think the play here, Pete, is that, let's brothers in arms, let's try to get this thing together and let's stand tall for the entire West Coast. So that struck me as this one, is that, you know what, we can't do as much damage and impact the economy as we may have in the past. We still need to be visible and heard. So let's get everybody on the West Coast to do it. And oh, by the way, the longshoreman agreement up in Seattle, Tacoma ends in 6 months. So anyway, that was kind of the things that caught my attention on this one.
Yeah, the word comrades comes to mind, Doug. Yeah, comrades, and it's effective. And you can talk about the lowered volume. And that was brought up a lot when you read the articles that have been posted in the conversations in the trade. The timing because of low volumes, it doesn't matter. The West Coast ports are still taking in plenty of volume, and there's still plenty of shipping and plenty of supply chains that come in through the West Coast. So talk about as low volume as you want, still plenty of ships, and it still gets plenty of attention. And nobody wants to see this. And it's just going to make more pain for the East Coast and for shippers who are going to just end up saying, well, I guess the long national nightmare isn't over on the West Coast. Hey guys, what do you got for me on the East Coast? And it's just going to bring more pressure on rates on the East Coast and on the ports on the East Coast. And as a guy on the East Coast who loves him some Port of New York, New Jersey, and Boston and Norfolk and Savannah and Charleston, and the list goes on, Jacksonville. And, I'm happy for him. I'm really happy for him. And I hope they keep some of this freight. It's a hardworking ports, Norfolk, list goes on and on.
Yeah.
But it's better for the country as a whole that we have that diversity of connectors and that we're able to use all of them. And this has been going on long enough, man. I think that both of these connected parties need to sit down and realize that their leverage has deteriorated, that this is getting to the point where it's diabolical while at the same time being childish. And they need to find some way to bring some degree of finality to their agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We spoke one of the episodes during the pandemic when we talked about the secondary and tertiary ports being the beneficiaries of the congestion out there. And once you give something away, it's hard to give it back, or whether you give something and hard to get it back. So it continues to validate that all the ports that you just referenced on the East Coast, the infrastructure, the opportunity was not a blip. It's real and it's sustainable, and it, diversifying the way that we enter into the United States and the way we manage our imports, I think is overall beneficial by having it spread out more than it was just pre-COVID.
And when they learned that it wasn't so bad, when they ripped that Band-Aid off and they use an alternate port with different draymen and different over-the-road carriers, different bonded facilities, and when that importer says, you know what, this works. Service was good. These different providers were good. I think we'll be okay. It demystifies the idea that the supply chain partners that they had were infallible. And now it changes their mind about defecting to other providers down the road. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the incumbents is really what it is.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. You nailed it. So, all right. Well, I'm going to shift to my first topic, which is another timely headline blurb from the last handful of days, which is the U.S. and the Chinese warships become dangerously close in the Strait of Taiwan Strait. And I think they almost collided. Basically, Chinese warship, 150 yards or something. And apparently the way I understand it, Pete, is the ship sped up. This is the Chinese ship, sped up, changed course, radioed to the U.S. destroyer and said, hey, you got to change your course or we're going to collide. The U.S. said, back down. What are you doing? Back and forth. And ultimately, the U.S. did slow down and change their course so there wasn't any type of collision. So obviously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the posturing that's still going on. It continues to validate the importance of Taiwan from both entities. And although we were agnostic for many, many years on our support and wartime efforts for Taiwan, obviously that's changing with the politicians and the meetings that we've had over in Taiwan, and the fact that we're doing joint missions. This one was actually a joint mission with Canada. So we're bringing in some of our allies to kind of cruise around the island and make sure there's no funny business going on, so to speak. But yeah, it was pretty bold, pretty out there, and I don't know. It's just another tangible example of what's going on and the cat and the mouse. So it'll be interesting to see how this progresses, I guess, is my take on it. So power move by China. Yep. Is there going to be more tense follow-up? Yes. I wouldn't say World War III is going to be played out on YouTube and TikTok, but you've probably seen the videos that have popped up just in the last couple of days. So just another tangible example of the tensions that are continuing to evolve between U.S.-China relations. I don't know. Do you got any take on that?
Oh, I got plenty. So been fortunate enough to hang around with a lot of real dangerous guys in my life, whether it's special warfare guys or professional fighters. And they have a couple of things in common. And one of them is they don't get mixed up in fights they don't need to be mixed up in. And it's something that I have a lot of respect for. And a very memorable moment in my life was being out with an honest-to-God UFC fighter, not just an MMA fighter, but a guy who's a UFC fighter, a guy that you've seen fight, and drinking with him one night. And that evening, there was a scuffle that went on, and someone started with him and got in his face and knew who he was and wanted to get him going. And he was like, hey, man, I don't know who you got a problem with, but it's not with me. Mm-hmm. And just de-escalated it and said, I think we should probably get going. And we all left. And there's certainly a lot of ego-driven comfort that can come from having someone start with you and finishing it for them. But there's also a lot of bad things that come from that as well. Mm-hmm. And China knew we weren't going to do anything. It gives them all kinds of propaganda, and it makes them be able to beat their chest in front of a lot of people. But if there's one thing that China doesn't want to do, it's fuck with the U.S. Navy. And sooner or later, they're going to find that out. So let them cross bows, let them, make starboard to port passages and do all kinds of dumb things underway. But all they're doing is proving to the world that they're playing dangerous games at sea with both people's lives and their vessels. Mm-hmm. And eventually, they're going to win the hard way. This isn't the Navy to mess with.
Yeah.
I'm very confident with that. Very, very confident with that.
Yeah.
So I get it. What's scary is that when you do dangerous things in close proximity with people that are dangerous, sooner or later, something bad can happen. Mm-hmm. So I just hope cooler heads prevail, man.
Yeah.
But no, that was, I forget what the acronym is, but F around and find out kind of moment. And if people don't start backing down, it could get pretty ugly, pal.
Yeah. Or there'll be a misstep. There'll be an honest to goodness, just human error on either side.
Or mechanical.
That you can't pull back from. That's kind of what
mechanical.
Really
I don't think people understand just how often things break underway, and you're farting around underway like that, and you have a problem with a pump, or you have a problem with who knows what, and your secondary system fails, and then before you know it, you can't turn one way or the other. And now, you're playing cute games and you got a real problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So stupid.
Yeah. Well, fun part of the show now is halftime, obviously brought to us by Keenan, the crew at Cap Logistics. Check out their site, caplogistics.com. They can take care of any of your transportation logistics needs. We wouldn't be here, Pete, without those guys, so we always want to make sure we can give them a shout out. But halftime, the beauty of it is we can talk about whatever we want. Doesn't have anything to do with logistics. So I don't know. You want to kick it off? You want me to jump?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I've been really fascinated by this story about legitimate cannabis companies apparently having some real financial problems. Been reading about a lot of them. I guess over the course of the past year, a lot of these companies have been closing. A lot of them have been merging. Many of the ones that were hoping to get themselves started up and take that next big step, if they haven't been started. A lot of ones that had bought real estate purchase licenses have been returning them in states where it's legal. There's been an overabundance of them. So why? I mean, you'd think, right? This was something that everybody had been running toward. Well, a couple of reasons. One, during the pandemic, when people were home, was smoking a lot of weed. And I guess, once they started going back to work and getting their lives back together again, just didn't really fit with their lifestyle. Two, people are buying the necessary, accoutrements to grow their own. So you have a lot of folks that are growing their own marijuana, and I guess it's a thing to share it. So let's say I grew it at my house. And you're like, hey, I was like, hey, Doug, I've got a whole bunch here. You want some? And you're like, sure, Pete. And it's sort of like if I grew too many zucchinis, I guess, and they're just giving it to their friends. Yeah. I wish I had a friend that grew too many zucchinis. So I read about this. In Massachusetts, you can have up to 10 plants. And as long as you don't charge your friends for it, it's perfectly legal.
Yeah.
As long as your friend's over 21. And then third, because it's so heavily taxed in most of these states, there's apparently still an incredible underground market for the cultivation and sale of marijuana, because it's just so much cheaper when the taxes aren't involved, that it's been really undercutting the legal sale. So there's a huge black market for it all over the place. And as they've been able to, grow it, sometimes right with the legal stuff and then sell it underneath the nose of the state, it's only made them able to sell it at an even more admirable price. So it's been a real problem, man. And we're about to have legal weed here in New Hampshire, and we're not going to tax it. So there's not going to be any sales tax on marijuana. They're just going to sell it through the state liquor stores and give the profits back to the state. So I'm wondering what that's going to mean for us here. Probably going to mean everybody from Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts is going to drive here to buy it. But please do, and then go back to where you came from, because we don't want you in our state. But it's probably what's going to happen. But.
Crazy. Well, the barrier to entry was worth it. Like you said, back in the pandemic here in Colorado, I don't even know how long it's been legal, a decade or so. And it was novel. People jumped into it. But if you didn't get into the weed business in Colorado within the first year, 18 months, it went corporate. You couldn't get back in. So a couple of yahoos like you and I trying to open up some weed shop kind of missed the opportunity if you didn't do it in the first 18 months from what I've seen. But all those things, I'm not going to rehash what you just said, but all of those things are happening here in Colorado. And it's starting to get a lot of attention. It is a pain in the ass to get up and running. Taxes, the whole 9 yards. So let's hit the brown market. It's called a side hustle now, and go from there. So
yeah, I got to believe it's a lot of work, Doug. Like, it seems like a real pain in the ass to be involved in that business.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hey, mine is talking a little bit about everybody's favorite company. Actually, it's not everybody's favorite company right now. ChatGPT and the whole AI thing would probably fit that category. But Apple's stock price just this morning hit an all-time high, $183 or so, putting a market cap at $2.6 trillion. Last week we talked about how $1 million just isn't what it used to be. So Apple is one a handful, $2.6 trillion. I think they're $400 billion bigger than the next company, which is Microsoft. So anyway, two things. Number one, there's always some statistic out there that just validates how stupid people are or how much we missed the boat. If you invested $1,000 at the IPO of Apple back in 1980, you would be worth $1.8 million. So that's you're a complete moron. Why didn't you invest in this company? Hindsight's 2020. But one of the things that it's on the that's coming out that people are thinking there's some speculation is they're coming out with a mixed reality headset in the next couple of days, launching it, $1,500. But the bottom line, Pete, is it's still like goggles you have to put on. And I think that, maybe Apple glasses were probably a little bit ahead of their time. People like you and I are both wearing right now. I think glasses are a little bit more acceptable. Like, I'm not putting a headset on, right? I'm not a gamer. So if I was a gamer, maybe. But I'm not putting a headset on to do this show. I'm not putting a headset on to do a Zoom call with or a Teams call with a customer or a vendor or anybody. So I don't get it. It's cool that Apple's a $2.6 trillion company. I just don't see how the headset is going to continue that trajectory. And I think in a couple of months, it's going to fizzle out a little bit, and it's just not going to be what it is. Not that the product is inferior. It's the fact that people have not adapted. The simple fact that you're putting these massive goggles on to go in an alternative world. I don't think we're ready for Ready Player One. So anyway, that just caught my attention.
I'm waiting for the virtual reality thing to all the business uses I see for it, repair, experimentation. I think when that happens, it's really gonna.
Yeah, you're right. We talked about once, I think, like the road checks of a truck, right? Mm-hmm. You put on these goggles, you walk around. I don't know, are my brakes legal or not? How many millimeters, or is this light operating? And the system will tell you, right? Just right there on your glasses. So the commercial application for sure. So, hey, I just almost forgot Casa Bonita update. So here's the deal. It's not open yet. There's going to be a series of, this is what's going to happen with the opening, a series of soft openings, not just one, but several. You got to get tickets. It's going to be limited time. It's like just weekends only. And then it's going to be 5 days and then 7 days. And it's going to pretty much be 6 to 8 weeks before muggles like you and I can even get in there to see the new menu. So I'm sure there'll be some backlash on that, but that's how it's going to roll out. They gave the menu last week. It's going to be a slow rollout. But you and I, Pete, we're not saddling up and going to Casa Bonita anytime soon.
Doug, we've got to know somebody who knows somebody. There's got to be. We have to know someone who can get us into that place.
Yeah.
This is like a South Park episode. Between the people that we know, we've got to know someone that can get us into Casa Bonita. I got a few weeks off, bro. I mean, I've got a project I'm working on right now, but I've done most of the on-site works, and I'm just writing stuff. I'm telling you, I will fly out if we can get in there.
That's right. Somebody's got to know a guy, and you're exactly right. It is a South Park episode, and I bet that Parker and Matt Stone will do a parody of it if things get kind of crazy and the opening comes out. So we'll have to see.
Respect my authority. I got the glasses, man. I got the mirrored sunglasses. I got the whole thing.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Awesome. All right. What's number 2 for you?
Number 2 for me is non-surprising news from OPEC. And they've actually ratcheted up today. They're ratcheting back output. OPEC it's like, whoa. Crude oil prices are way down. We cannot have this. This is bad for us. And it's particularly bad for this new relationship that we're trying to build with our good friends in Russia. You got to close that pipe drain here. So they've absolutely slowed down drilling, and they've slowed down output. And then on top of that, they've increased prices pretty much everywhere. So that news came out today. And what that means in the macro world is you're going to see the price of crude. It's going to react everywhere, right? So you're going to see crude go up. You're also going to see exploration increase. So you're going to see drilling happening in places where now it's going to be more financially rewarding for them to go after it. Probably see an increase in fracking, people working in the oil sands in Canada, more exploration in Canada. So probably attitudes being a little more open in the United States for oil exploration and drilling and extraction, right? Macro wise, also, it's going to mean that fuel prices are probably going to remain where they are right now. You're starting to see some easing around the U.S., which is, it was nice, particularly in the summer when everyone's driving everywhere. Sad trombone, wah, wah, wah. Near the end of the summer now, it's probably going to be stable. When we start, this would have affected us like August, September. It's probably going to be flat, when those months begin to end. Those numbers are probably going to continue on, which really sucks. And also it's going to end up being on a micro level for us as people in logistics. It's going to affect transportation costs. So as we head into our negotiation phases for the coming fall, you're going to see this actually hitting up our logistics costs. Another thing to keep in mind is diesel prices. They're probably going to increase because these barrels of oil are going to go toward gasoline first, then jet fuel, then they hit bunker C, then they hit diesel, which means those are also going to increase. It's sad news all around, my friend. It's also going to be a political issue because as crude oil continues to go up and gas prices stay high, everyone's going to promise they can get them to go down. Not a lot a president can do about this other than letting everybody frack their backyards, which probably not the most popular way of dealing with it.
Yeah. It's, if you take out the word oil and insert the word garbage and talk about the mafia in New York City, everything you talked about could pretty much be the same. It just baffles me. Well, it doesn't baffle me. It's amazing that it's so transparent that the OPEC and these countries are literally a cartel. Like they literally say, we're going to do this because we are not making enough money. Right. And it's insane. So I saw when you kicked this over to me, I went and looked at a couple of headlines, and even the headlines are kind of confusing, right? This was not this wasn't USA Today or Wall Street Journal, but this is crazy. I'm going to read 2 headlines. OPEC has pledged an extra $1 million or an extra 1 million barrels a day supply cut. Like, how confusing is that? It's like, they just pledged $1 million to cut, right? It's a very confusing statement. And then the next one I saw was that OPEC will make an extra 1 million barrels a day oil supply cut. I'm not reading these as clear, but they'll make an extra million barrels a day of oil supply cut.
Yeah,
right?
It's not like they're releasing more, because that's what it seems like in the beginning. But then there's that word at the end that's sort of like the shocker, right? Yeah, no. It's a cut. We're not making more. It's actually less. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there was a news report that came out last week that these American engineers, did you hear about the air electricity? Did you read about this, Doug?
No. Air electricity?
Yeah. I had to make sure that I wasn't having an acid flashback. These scientists have built a machine, and I'm sure Keenan's all over this because this is like a Keenan story and a half. Yeah. So they've got this technology where you can take any material, any organic material, and it creates electricity from it. So really? You make a machine that's about the size of a refrigerator, and you put it in a house, and it creates electricity by pulling moisture from the air. And one of these machines that's about the size of a refrigerator could create enough electricity to power a house, and it's completely carbon neutral. I do not at all understand how it works. I barely understand, fire. But I've watched a bunch of videos about it, and I'll learn more. But it works on a very small scale right now. But they're, somewhere down the road. So we'll have to. Maybe we'll look into this in one of our future episodes.
Yeah.
OPEC knows it's just a matter of, a century or so before we overcome them.
Yeah. Well, that's see. A long time. That whole scenario, that whole thing you just said reminds me of Mike TV on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
Being able to move.
We can. So we can move electrons. We can move like one individual electron to some other place. We just can't move a person yet. Yeah. Someday.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Pete, I got to shut her down. I got my boss man looking through my window.
Yeah, so that's it for another edition of Global Trade this week. We want to thank our friends at Cap Logistics, Keenan back at the booth. And we want to thank you, our loyal listeners and loyal viewers, for coming back week after week, and the good folks at Cap Logistics who support us. And we'll be back next week with another incredible edition of Global Trade this week. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.